beautiful.
Mozart was the greatest of all composers. He wrote a symphony at the age of 9, an opera at 11. Join me, Peter Ustinov, as we explore the life and mystique of Mozart.
Saturday night at 9, here on OPB.
Does Oregon need more jail cells, or can we afford to close a few prisons? Join us for Northwest Week, Friday night at 9, here on OPB.
Funding for local broadcast of the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by Davis Wright Tremaine, a law firm serving businesses and individuals from offices in Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho, Alaska, and Washington, D.C.
Good evening. I'm Robert MacNeil in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Thursday, we have a report, then a sparring between Republican Senator Pete Domenici and White House official Robert Rubin about budgets and deficits. The Israeli ambassador and a key Palestinian summarize what the Middle East peace talks have accomplished, and correspondent Charles Krause talks with the foreign minister of Macedonia about American plans to send troops there.
Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour is provided by AT&T and by PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
The House Ways and Means Committee passed a tax bill today. It would raise about $245 billion in new revenues over 5 years by increasing the top income tax rate from 31% to 36%, the top corporate rate to 35%. It also introduces a broad-based energy tax. The committee vote was down party lines, 24 Democratic ayes to 14 Republican noes. Committee Chairman Dan Rostenkowski said this after the vote.
I think it's a major victory for the administration. The President's program has taken its first step and will be moving ahead. He's asked for significant deficit reduction, and as hard as it was, I think we've given it to him.
The highest-ranking Republican on the committee, Bill Archer of Texas, criticized the bill. He said the energy tax was a jobs killer and would bring an already crippled economy to its knees. We'll have more on this story right after the news summary. The Labor Department today reported a 0.4% rise in consumer prices last month. It was the largest increase in 3 months. Yesterday, the department reported wholesale prices rose 0.6% in April, their biggest gain in 2.5 years. President Clinton was asked if the inflation reports were cause for worry. He spoke at the White House.
I think we have to watch it closely, but there is no, at the present time, no cause for long-term concern. It's not, I want to watch it, and we will be watching it. But if it could be just a blip, there are lots of things that could have produced it. We'll just have to see. We'll wait for a month or so and see what's going on. I can't, unless there's some underlying change in the economy, it's difficult to imagine how we could have a significant upsurge in inflation.
In a separate report, the Commerce Department said April retail sales were up 1.2%, the strongest showing in 6 months. Robin?
The 9th round of Middle East peace talks ended today without any agreements. Palestinian self-rule was the sticking point in the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. Both sides are now considering a State Department document that would outline the progress made so far. But the Palestinians said they were disappointed the U.S., as sponsor of the talks, had not exerted more pressure on Israel. Secretary of State Warren Christopher had this reaction.
And as a full partner, and in doing that, we sometimes present ideas to them. They may not receive immediate acceptance, but we hope they'll receive acceptance over time. One thing I would emphasize is that we will play our role, but they must all play theirs. We can only go so far in this endeavor. It's up to the parties as to whether or not they want our help. We'll be there if they want our help, but we can't do it for them. And so I just want to reaffirm our willingness, indeed our desire, without getting into the substance, to play the role of full partner. But once again, as I say, they must do their part.
A ceasefire appeared to be holding in the Bosnian town of Mostar today. UN troops were able to patrol the town's streets for the first time in nearly a week. They reported only sporadic gunfire. Croats seeking to expand control of the city fought fierce battles with Muslims over the last 4 days. The two sides had been allies against the Serbs during most of Bosnia's civil war. The European community warned Croatia today it faces international sanctions if it does not try to stop the attacks by ethnic Croats in Bosnia. Bosnian Serbs are voting this weekend on whether to accept the Vance-Owen peace plan. President Clinton was asked about it at the White House. He said he was not putting much stock in that vote.
The issue is whether the Bosnian Serbs are ready to have a serious peace process that will save lives, recognize that all those people have some right in some way to live in the piece of land we now know as Bosnia-Herzegovina, and confine the conflict so that it doesn't spill over and cause much more serious political consequences for everybody. And that's what I hope. You know, I wouldn't say I ever have given up hope, but I'm skeptical about it, but it might produce something.
White House spokeswoman Dee Dee Myers said today the European allies want U.S. troops to be deployed in the Yugoslav province of Kosovo as well as the Republic of Macedonia. The president said yesterday he was considering sending troops to Macedonia to keep the Bosnian conflict from spreading. But Myers said a troop deployment was not under active consideration at this time.
The Star Wars program was officially pronounced dead today. The word came from Defense Secretary Les Aspin. The program was begun by President Reagan in 1983. So far, nearly $30 billion has been spent on research. Mr. Reagan envisioned an impenetrable shield in space against Soviet missile attack. Aspin said the Clinton administration would continue work on anti-missile weapons, but only small-scale research on a space-based system. He said the fate of the program was sealed by the collapse of the Soviet Union.
A gunman in France took 21 nursery school children and their teacher hostage today. The man freed 13 of the children during the day, but demanded $18 million ransom for the others. He claimed he had a bomb in a box he was carrying. Police went into the school outside Paris to negotiate while worried parents waited outside. They said so far, none of the children had been harmed. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the battle of the budget, the Middle East peace talks, and the foreign minister of Macedonia.
First tonight, we focus on the latest round in President Clinton's fight to fix the economy through a combination of taxes, spending cuts, spending programs, and now a deficit reduction trust fund. Today, Mr. Clinton scored one interim victory. The House Ways and Means Committee passed, largely intact, his tax program, raising $245 billion in the next 5 years. This afternoon, I talked about what's ahead with Robert Rubin, chairman of the National Economic Council, and Republican Senator Pete Domenici. We'll have their debate in a moment after a glance back at how the economic plan got this far. Carmi Holman reports.
Bring down the deficit. Do it with spending cuts and tax increases. No tax increases without the spending cuts.
President Clinton went on the road again this week in a renewed attempt to sell his economic package. It's basically the same package he first outlined before a joint session of Congress back in February.
Tonight, the American people know we have to change, but they're also likely to ask me tomorrow and all of you for the weeks and months ahead whether we have the fortitude to make the changes happen in the right way.
Whether through fortitude or not, it appeared at first Congress was willing to make those changes. House and Senate budget committees sprang into action with an exhaustive round of hearings. The president sent his top economic advisors to Capitol Hill to provide, if not all the specifics of the plan, then at least the direction they thought the president's economic plan would take the country.
We have a series of problems, both short run and long run, that we are trying to address simultaneously in a very ambitious package.
And Republicans, now out of power at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, found they could not slow the Democrats' momentum.
Well, of course, the taxes remain permanent and the spending cuts are only temporary.
That's
what
wrong.
I don't understand
That's wrong.
is...
That's wrong,
What
John.
I don't understand is...
John, the spending cuts are permanent.
No, they're not. They never are.
By mid-March, the House, with all but a handful of Democrats in lockstep with the president, passed the budget resolution. 1 week later, the Senate did the same. Top Democrats went to the White House to help the president celebrate the first big victory of his administration.
Yesterday was a great day of victory for ordinary Americans and for the proposition that this government can work for them again, that we don't have to be mired in gridlock, that we don't have to spend all of our time posturing and dividing and running for cover instead of moving into the future. It was a wonderful beginning.
By approving the budget resolution, the Congress promised to cut some spending, setting 1994 spending limits at $1.5 trillion, a small rate of inflation increase over this year, with similar increases in years to come. But it also added new so-called investment spending at the president's request, $140 billion for education and investments in technology over 5 years. And by recommending higher taxes and spending cuts, it set an ambitious 5-year deficit reduction goal of $496 billion. But while the budget committees could take credit for putting the president's economic plan into motion, all they had done was design the blueprint, setting spending and deficit reduction targets, and leaving the specifics for other committees to decide, a process known as reconciliation.
And what reconciliation is, and this gets a little confusing, is it is essentially the implementing of the budget, the cuts, the tax increases, and then you have the 13 appropriations bills that actually spend the money.
That part of the budget has got more and more of a squeeze on it, and it's what the American people haven't the foggiest notion of what these numbers are. I'd be willing to bet that probably 3/4 of it is personnel related. You're talking about FBI agents, you're talking about prison guards, you're talking about FAA traffic controllers, you're talking about people in the EPA trying to keep the water and the air clean. You're talking about some, pork barrel projects. You're talking about the government, the courthouses, the prisons, the buildings, the highways, the airports. That's what you're talking about. That's the discretionary budget. Very tough to cut that deeply. It's already been cut over the last few years.
The 13 appropriations subcommittees were instructed to find cuts of $153 billion toward that $500 billion deficit reduction goal. This is the Senate Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee. Here, the cuts could mean that some popular farm programs will have to be slashed. Former Senator Warren Rudman was a member of the Appropriations Committee.
For instance, in the defense area, the Senate Armed Services Committee will decide how many widgets it wishes to buy of a particular kind, will authorize the purchase of 100 of these devices. Then the Appropriations Committee must decide whether to fund those 100 or to fund less. In some cases, to everybody's consternation, the Appropriations Committee has funded more. That is not the way it's supposed to work.
The authorization committees were told to find $43 billion in savings by trimming programs like seldom-touched entitlements and by raising fees and tariffs. And the two tax-writing committees, House Ways and Means and Senate Finance, were told to find $300 billion through new and higher taxes. Former Congressman Tom Downey was a member of the Ways and Means Committee.
Fortunately for President Clinton, Chairman Rostenkowski is an admirer and supporter of President Clinton, so he wants to carry the president's package. But in the process of carrying the president's package, he realizes if he's going to achieve deficit reduction in his committee, that he's going to have to make some adjustments to satisfy the committee and to make sure that that portion of reconciliation will pass on the floor.
So even though President Clinton had reason to rejoice after his budget victory, Senate Minority Leader Bob Dole knew there was trouble ahead.
And now, even though this is a very difficult task, the hard part starts. We start shooting with real bullets from here on.
The president and Democratic leaders here on Capitol Hill knew that getting a consensus on tax increases and spending cuts would involve some bitter medicine and painful arm twisting. The last thing they needed was a drawn-out, much-publicized debate over the president's so-called stimulus package. But that's exactly what they got.
I am against the possibility, under the circumstances, that our government could be taxing Social Security beneficiaries and working families, and at the same time could possibly be funding gymnasiums, parks, graffiti abatement, bike paths, parking
Designed to give a little boost to the economy by supplying an assortment of summer jobs, construction, and social programs, the stimulus package sent to Congress by the president totaled $16 billion, just a fraction of the president's $1.5 trillion budget. But Senate Republicans, who had no input into the stimulus package, decided to employ the only device available to prevent Democrats from rolling over them. They filibustered.
Maybe the package can pass. But until that happens, I can tell my colleagues on the other side, better file cloture. So I don't think this bill's going anywhere unless we can make substantial changes in it.
The weeks of debate became an embarrassment to President Clinton. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell finally had to withdraw the stimulus bill. President Clinton lost a large measure of the momentum he gained through his budget victory.
I just misgauged it, and I hope that I can learn something. I've just been here 90 days, and
so the president got by the easy part in very good shape. He had some tough times with his stimulus package, and now he's into the heart of the matter. The game is afoot right now.
Since the stimulus package setback, the president's economic plan has struggled through various congressional committees. This week, House Appropriations Chairman Charles Natcher and his 12 subcommittee chairmen were trying desperately to divide up a shrinking share of discretionary funds. And they're angry that they've also been asked by the president to find additional cuts to make up for that $140 billion in new investment spending the president wants over 5 years without his telling them exactly what to cut.
Now you get the administration saying to the Congress, fine, you want to do that, go ahead and do it, and then we'll reason together. And I think in light of what's going on in this administration this year, that's probably as good an approach as you can find.
Tough choices were being made in the authorization committees. For instance, House Energy and Commerce cut $28 billion from Medicare over the next 5 years. And in the Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Dan Rostenkowski spent the last 2 weeks trying to fashion a tax bill that both his 23 fellow Democrats on the committee and the president could live with. Rostenkowski emerged today with a plan that raises new energy taxes but gives relief to farmers and to aluminum producers, raises the top tax rate on big corporations to 35%, not the 36% the president had recommended. And the president's proposed investment tax credit for small businesses was dropped, but allowable write-offs for the purchase of business equipment were raised from $10,000 to $25,000. Medicare taxes now will apply to all wages, not just the first $135,000 as in current law. The percentage of Social Security benefits subject to tax will be raised from 50% to 85%. And the wealthiest 2% of Americans will pay a top income tax rate of 36%, up from 31%. Chairman Rostenkowski said his committee had achieved a preliminary victory.
I'm enthusiastic about the way my committee majority members reacted to some very difficult votes. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have a lot of problems with convincing first our colleagues on the floor of the House of Representatives. But that's going to take a major effort on the part of the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and the members of this committee.
As for President Clinton, while on the road drumming up support for his economic package, he added a new twist, a trust fund containing revenues from all new taxes and budget savings and earmarked for deficit reduction only. The president is hoping that will help attract enough members of Congress to win final passage of his package.
Now to two key players. Robert Rubin, one of the chief economic advisors to the president, heads the National Economic Council. He joins us from the old Executive Office building. Pete Domenici of New Mexico is the ranking Republican on the Senate Budget Committee and joins us from Capitol Hill. Mr. Rubin, the budget plan is through the House Ways and Means Committee today. What, and will presumably go through the House, what do you expect coming up in the Senate? The president sounded today as though he might be a bit worried about some votes from Democratic and moderate, conservative and moderate Democrats.
Well, we obviously have to work with the Senate Finance Committee and then the Senate as a whole. The president met with the Senate Finance Committee recently. I was there. I think the view that I would express is that we think we have a real and serious deficit reduction program as part of an economic plan. And I think based on everything that we've heard and that I've heard, I would be optimistic that this will get adopted both by the Senate Finance Committee and then by the Senate, although there may be some design changes, but the basic framework will remain intact.
What is your view of it, Senator Domenici?
Well, I think it's in big trouble in the Senate. Frankly, it is predominantly a tax plan. I regret to disagree with my friend, Mr. Rubens. I don't know you as well as I know some others, but I have great respect for what you've done in the past and for your professionalism. But frankly, I don't really know how we can call this much more than a major new tax program. There aren't very many real cuts, and it isn't nearly as big a deficit reduction, according to the Congressional Budget Office, as the President says. And I don't know what you've got around that would convince some of these senators that all these taxes are going to create jobs, especially the BTU tax. I think that's where you run into some real problems.
Well, let's take a few pieces of this separately. Let's start with the trust fund idea that was embraced, Mr. Rubin, by the President yesterday. It's been widely attacked by Mr. Domenici, among others, as a gimmick. Why is it not a gimmick, in your view? Why is it real?
Well, I think it serves two purposes. I think we do have a very good plan. I'll speak for myself, but I think this is true of all of us who are involved in developing this economic plan. I came into this administration because I thought we were at a historical crossroads in this country and that we simply had to develop an effective deficit reduction program. And I think we have developed one, and I think that the senator knows far better than I, because he's more expert in legislative process than I. If it gets adopted as presently presented or goes through the reconciliation process and is adopted, then it has the force of law. Sure. So I think we have an effective deficit reduction program. I think the trust fund serves two purposes. Number one, I think it helps explain this to the American people, and I think that's very important. And secondly, I do think it adds another layer of protection, a kind of a guarantee, if you will, of something that is already a matter of law. It's a belts and suspenders kind of measure, if you think of it that way.
Senator Domenici, why do you call it a gimmick?
Well, let me see. I would quote first from one of the best budget experts in this administration. I think what Alice Rivlin said about it was that it's some way of kind of showing the budget or explaining it. I myself want to say to the American people that this idea has been bandied around for 12 years that I'm aware of. Frankly, nobody has had the audacity to suggest that it would help solve the budget deficit. So after they thought about it a bit, they've all been discouraged from doing it because it is a gimmick. All you do is you have the exact same plan you had yesterday. If the American people think there's too much taxes and not enough spending cuts in that plan, please don't think that calling the taxes a trust fund set of taxes changes it. Doesn't change it one bit. If it doesn't, it seems to me that it's a gimmick to either confuse the people or try to talk them into something that they're not for yesterday but ought to be for tomorrow, even though nothing has changed.
Well, if it forces the President to put all new tax revenues, if they're approved, into this trust fund to reduce the deficit, doesn't it also force him to finance any new spending he wants to do out of cuts in existing programs, which is what you and other Republicans have been arguing he should do?
There is nothing in the law that does that. There's nothing in his suggested appropriation cuts that would change the law to put new caps on. So the point of the matter is you can put taxes in one package and continue spending out of the other package. It's sort of like letting a boat sink on the back end by spending all the money and having a trust fund up on the front of the boat saying, don't worry, it's here to protect you.
Senator, Mr. Rubin?
Could I respond to that?
Yes, I wish you would.
I agree with the fundamental comment that the senator made. The basic question here is the plan real? I also agree with the senator that Alice Rivlin, who's the deputy director of OMB, and I would add also Leon Panetta, who's the director of OMB, are exceedingly serious people about deficit reduction, and they both feel very strongly that our plan is real. Once you have a real plan, then what it does is, A, it helps explain it to the American people, and B, I believe it provides another level of protection. But I do agree with the senator. The fundamental question is the plan real? And in my view, this plan is real.
Robin,
yes.
Could I just make one other point? I remember clearly, and I asked my staff to find the words President Clinton was talking about a checkoff plan that President Bush put forward, checking off part of your taxes and saying, if you do that, we'll cut spending an equal amount. And I think candidate Clinton said that this was a desperate candidate, and it said that he was looking around for fool's gold. Now that's kind of his words, not mine, but I think the president really ought to be, if his plan is having trouble, he really ought not muddy up the water and make himself look like more of a gimmick on his budget by suggesting that a trust fund, which is a nullity, can't work, is going to help anything.
Mr. Rubin.
Yeah, could I respond to that?
Yes.
I don't think the plan is in substantive trouble. I don't think it's in political trouble either, but I don't think it's in substantive trouble. I think that the issue that the president addressed was having a good plan. A, how do we now explain it? And B, even though it is already, in effect, locked in by legislation, how do we provide another layer of protection? And that was the notion of the trust fund. As far as discretionary spending is concerned, which I think the senator alluded to, there are, as he knows, caps in 94 and 95, and there are discussions about drafting caps going forward in time beyond that.
Well, the president's budget doesn't even comply with those caps, but I don't want to talk budgetese here.
Let me come down to basics here. Senator Domenici, would you think you were successful, you and your fellow Republicans, if you were able just to defeat this program altogether?
Oh, I don't think there's any question that many of us feel, and I do, that to defeat this entire tax plan would be the best thing that could happen to America. First of all, it wouldn't be the end of anything. It would be the beginning of a new effort, and I would hope it would be bipartisan this time. And secondly, I would hope that by making it bipartisan, you'd get after the real culprit, which is the mandatory or entitlement side of this budget. Without that, no trust fund for taxes and no amount of taxes is going to solve anything, and I believe it's going to cause less jobs, not more. So I'm hopeful we will defeat the entire tax package.
Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, I tend to disagree with that view, as you might expect. I think if you look out through 1998 and you take that five-year period, what you'll find is the OMB and the CBO numbers are approximately the same. One is $496 billion of deficit reduction, the other $525 or something like that. So those numbers are approximately the same. They are about half taxes and half spending cuts. I think that the adoption of this program is critical if we're going to get our country back on the right track again for long-term competitiveness. And I think it was extraordinarily courageous of the president to take on the very large number of difficult issues he did to develop a deficit reduction program of specific tax increases and specific spending cuts.
Senator Domenici, you've been one who for a long time has been arguing that the deficit needs to be reduced. Does what you just said a minute ago mean that you are against raising taxes even if they're specifically for reducing the deficit?
I'm speaking for myself. I mean, I have voted for taxes 3 different times as part of budget reduction packages. I've learned something from it, but let me tell you, I would not vote for taxes with the president's package because there are just not enough cuts. Now, having said that, if a major package that was enforceable that also addressed mandatory expenditures, the entitlements other than Social Security, if that was put together, I, as one Republican, will support some taxes. I don't think it should be the BTU tax, but I would support some. So I want to make that clear. I'm not just a carper. I think this plan's a bad plan.
Yes. Mr. Rubin, in the House, getting through the Ways and Means Committee, the BTU tax, or energy tax the senator just referred to, was altered a bit. Exceptions were made for the aluminum industry, for some agriculture, a few other small details. Do you expect to have to compromise that energy tax further to get it through the Senate?
I'm not an expert on the legislative politics of the energy tax, but I think our view is that we now have a tax that should work its way through the Senate reasonably well, though we certainly are prepared to work with the Senate in order to get this through both the Finance Committee and then on the floor, adopted on the floor of the Senate.
Senator Domenici, are there any ways in which the energy tax could be made appealing, palatable to people like you?
No, I think when you do it the way they've done it, you invite chaos. You're seeing that chaos by all the exceptions that are going to be created, and you know what's going to happen. The more exceptions you create, the more it ends on the backs of the poor and on the backs of direct backs of consumers and on automobile users, the way it's structured. There's twice as much tax on gasoline as there is on natural gas or coal, and the more exceptions you make, the more you put the burden on that kind of fuel, and that's just not fair.
I want to close these remarks by also saying that I don't want to leave the message that I believe the President's plan is $1 in taxes for $1 in cuts. I choose to use the Congressional Budget Office numbers, take out all the interest savings, and add user fees to taxes and say they're all the same. And it turns out to be $3.25 in taxes for every dollar in real spending cuts. And that just isn't going to work. And watch, it won't help the economy. If the President wins this, the economy is going to sputter worse, especially the next 12 or 14 months.
Mr. Rubin?
Several comments. One, you can put whatever labels you want on different pieces of this. My own view, and it's just a sort of practical, at least in my view, common sense view, is that if you put the labels on that most appropriately fit it, it is about one-to-one. Secondly, on the question of mandatory, I do agree with the Senator that needs to be addressed. That's basically health care. We have health care cuts here. But the next big step is to deal specifically with the health care program, the health care system in our country, and that, as you know, is forthcoming. Thirdly, in terms of taxes on the poor and the middle class, this was designed specifically to be progressive. Taxes on the affluent were raised substantially, and various provisions were put into our program, such as the EITC, in order to make sure this burden did not fall on the poor.
The Earned Income Tax Credit.
I apologize, the Earned Income Tax Credit.
It doesn't help those people that don't have families, though. It doesn't help senior citizens or those kind of people, that investment tax.
Senator Domenici, the Republicans, having killed the stimulus package or jobs program that the President offered, you're now offering your own. Does that mean that, having said his was unnecessary, you've now changed your minds in view of new economic figures and believe that a stimulus package is necessary?
Where is the Republican stimulus package?
Well, is there not a Republican jobs package?
If you're talking about Senator Bill Roth's led effort with about 12 or 15 Republican senators, it is a jobs package, but clearly it's mostly on the tax side and regulatory side, trying to build incentives in for business, particularly small business, so they can hire more people. It's in that context that it's a jobs bill. The President's jobs bill is very strange in that for the whole 5 years, it's principally new taxes, and much of it will be on small business, in spite of the rhetoric that it's going to tax the rich. I think 65, maybe 70% of those taxed in the new marginal rates will be small businessmen and women in the United States.
Finally, Mr. Rubin, the White House has been looking for a way of introducing or reintroducing a stimulus or jobs package of its own in negotiations with the Democrats. With the Republicans now having come forward with the one we've just heard described, do you see any way of joining forces, coming up with a deal?
Well, the President originally proposed a stimulus program for '93, which I happen to think was very good policy. It failed, I think, for political reasons. The President has indicated interest in certain programs. It's not really so much a jobs package. It's not a macroeconomic stimulation package anymore. It's a question of specific programs that serve specific purposes, and he's indicated interest in it. I don't know legislatively where that stands today. Let me comment on one more item, which is where these taxes fall. We have done an exceedingly serious, as you might imagine, distributional study of the tax program we put forward, and our view is it falls primarily on the affluent, and it was designed to be progressive.
Right. Well, Mr. Rubin and Senator Domenici.
You might look that one through and see if you don't have some studies on small business and that's subchapter S corporations and see if they aren't taxed.
We need to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you both.
Now the Middle East peace talks. The latest round between Israel, Arab nations, and the Palestinians ended today in Washington. The talks have been going on since the end of 1991. We get an update and assessments now from Itamar Rabinovich, Israel's ambassador to the United States, and Anan Ashrawi, spokesperson for the Palestinian delegation. Disappointment is the word that was bandied about today when the talks ended. Why?
But perhaps disappointment is a relative term because it depends on your expectations. If you expect too much, then you are disappointed. I must say this round began on an upbeat note, on a high note, with a serious...
It was 3 weeks ago, this round.
This round started 3 weeks ago, on the 27th of April, with real expectations, with genuine commitments, with an approach that promised to be qualitatively different. And it started with the Palestinians agreeing to the formation of serious working groups, official working groups. We came prepared with a document to work on a joint declaration of principles.
On self-rule in the West Bank and Gaza?
On interim self-government authority, let's put it that way. The terms does not indicate...
We could spend all night on those kind of terms.
Yes, diction and semantics are very important in our part of the world. But at the same time, there was a gradual regression, let's say, especially since it is connected to the conditions in the occupied territories, the human rights
So things
issues.
got worse once the talks began rather than...
Well, we
better?
began the first week with serious expectations. You must understand that coming to the round was not easy. And we said that this is an important round because it is a round to test intentions, commitments, and whether we have generated a new impulse, a new momentum in the peace process. And I think people expected too much from this round. Unfortunately, when it came down to the serious business of putting down documents, of really looking at positions, there was a regression from the Israeli side onto earlier positions that were more hardline and entrenched. And in terms of the commitments that the Israelis made before this round, on substance as well as on policies and measures in the occupied territories, whether returning deportees or releasing prisoners or even lifting the siege, we saw an increased escalation, let's say, in human rights abuses, which also ruined the atmosphere, and that's not conducive to real negotiation.
All right, we'll go through the specifics in a moment, Ben. We'll back through those. But Mr. Ambassador, first of all, does Israel share the use of this word disappointment as this round ended today? The 9th round ended after 3 weeks.
I wouldn't dispute the use of the term disappointment, but I would have chosen a different characterization. We would have liked to move more. We do like to move more. We actually are willing to accept the State Department's position and to stop speaking about rounds, to move into continuous negotiation, speak about sessions and breaks in between sessions, with a view to creating this pressure cooker atmosphere that would be conducive to further progress. So we would have liked to see more progress. We are slightly disappointed that we have not seen more on either track, but we are not disappointed in that full sense of the term.
Well, you heard what Mrs. Rawi just said, that she, from her perspective, from the Palestinian perspective, there was regression in terms of the Israeli position, just since the talks began 3 weeks ago.
Yes, of course, I've heard that. Of course, the round began better than it ended. We were also hoping to end it with some concrete achievement, a paper, something that would embody an achievement, because a peace process between Israelis and Arabs, in this particular case between Israelis and Palestinians, has to be tended, has to be fed. There are constituencies back home that need to be reassured that this process is going somewhere, because there is a real yearning for movement on this. And this could not be achieved, and in that respect, it ended less dramatically, less significantly than it began.
Well, what happens now?
Well, I think now is the time for a serious period of assessment and of preparatory work. If we are going to inject more vitality and momentum and commitment to the peace process, we have to work simultaneously on parallel tracks. We have to work on the American participation and role, which has changed, let's say, noticeably in this round. We have to work on conditions in the occupied territories and on respect for human rights and putting an end to the house demolition policy, to the use of live ammunition, to the policy of the isolation of Jerusalem and the siege of Jerusalem. All these issues, in addition to the substance of negotiations, preparing...
You're talking about the present as well as the future. You want both things discussed at the same time.
A period of assessment. Well, we don't have negotiations in between rounds, but I think there's no reason why we cannot, first of all, learn from the mistakes that were made retroactively and try to generate a forward-looking approach that would mean a real commitment, not just in words but in action.
Mr. Ambassador, the Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, in fact, we ran it in our news summary a while ago, earlier in the programs, when he was asked, why doesn't the United States do it? He said, there are limits to what the United States can do. He said, you all have to carry the brunt of this. The real movement has to be between the Israelis and the Palestinians, or the Israelis and the Syrians and the other parties involved in each one of these things. Is he right? I mean, can the U.S. not do any more than it is doing up to this point?
First of all, the U.S. has been doing a lot, and I think we both, all four of us, on all four negotiating tracks, appreciate the goodwill and the real hard work that is invested. In fact, I don't think that the round would have begun and not would have ended without or but for this U.S. role. But at the end of the day, peace has to be made between the parties themselves, and the role of the partner, full though it may be defined, is limited. And in this context, you ask what can be done, I would say two things. One is that we have been speaking so far about the negotiations with the Palestinians. Another key to progress is in our negotiations with the Syrians. And once there is movement with the state of Syria, I think the Palestinians would feel easier and better in their negotiations.
Excuse me, is he right about that?
Well, I think we need progress on all tracks because we are committed to a comprehensive...
But they are linked in some ways, and not in a direct way, but always a very important indirect way.
Well, there is, yes. I think that progress on one track generates progress on, and encourages progress on other tracks. And that is important. But if you want to go back to the American role, I think it is important at this stage to try to work out a mechanism for this new American involvement that has evolved into a kind of semantic change, but has to be given a real mechanism and substance, like full partner, for instance. Now, is this, when they talk about being a mediator, or sorry, an intermediary rather than a mediator, does that mean that there is no American perspective, there's no American responsibility, or there's no attempt at presenting alternative positions and solutions?
An American plan that goes on the table.
We're not saying that they have a blueprint, and we're not saying they should negotiate on behalf of the parties, no. But first of all, they got the parties together. There is a responsibility because they launched this peace process. Admittedly, it was a different administration, but this administration shows concern, and therefore we have to evolve a role for the Americans that would be more involved in terms of being a catalyst, in terms of being a mediator, really.
Let me ask both of you this question. Those of us who are not intimately involved in the minutiae of all of this, and are watching the two of you now and have been observing this from afar for a long time, is the situation in the Middle East better because there have been 9 rounds of talks?
It is better, but I would not carry that to extreme. The purpose of the peace process is not to have a peace process, but to achieve peace, and this could only take that long. But first of all, as long as there are peace talks, there is less violence. Secondly, the peace process is more than a negotiation or a process of bargaining, it's also an educational process. And I think that the fact that people in the Middle East watch us on television or see photographs in the newspapers of Israelis and Arabs shaking hands and talking to each other carries an educational message. And in that respect, and for other reasons, I think the situation is better because we do have talks.
Is it better for the Palestinians?
Well, I think there's an irony.
Since October 1991, when the talks began, do you feel there's been movement for your cause?
I must say very frankly, there is a converse relationship in this case, in our case, because there has been a deliberate and willful use of power, of the fact that Israel is an occupier and we are a people under occupation, in order to gain political advantage. And we called it very bluntly, it's political blackmail. It's a manipulation of a human condition for political advantage. And it should not happen. The situation in the occupied territories has deteriorated drastically. The settlement activities were stepped up from the beginning of negotiations, and the human rights abuses escalated, as I said. You had new policies in terms of collective punishments. Even this deportation of 400 that dealt a serious blow to the 8th round. All these were outcomes of an unchecked Israeli policy that continued to use this advantage to gain political advantages, and at the same time not to generate an atmosphere that is conducive to peace by demonstrating that they actually have the will to change the environment, to demonstrate that they are willing to create more confidence in the occupied territories, more confidence in the legitimacy and the credibility of the process, rather than doubt.
Let me say two things in this regard. One is we are the stronger party. The Palestinians are part of a larger Arab world, but one-on-one, Israelis and Palestinians, we are the stronger party. There is a certain responsibility that derives from that. We exercise it, but up to a point. I mean, in order for this to be a negotiation, the Palestinians will have to do something and begin by actually engaging us on the contents of autonomy or self-rule. Secondly, we are the more powerful partner, but we live close by and we are embraced willy-nilly we are embraced. And the power of the more powerful party is lost to a considerable extent through this motion of embrace.
But what about her point, which has been the Palestinian point since October 1991, that no matter what's happening in the negotiating room, that on the ground in the West Bank and the Gaza, the deportee issue, all of these issues, you can't separate one from the other.
They undermine the peace process, certainly.
Well, the answer is that you integrate it into the peace process, and as we know, the issue of the Hamas, the fresh deportees, is being addressed, and 126 of them are now being allowed to come back, and all of them would be allowed to come back by the end of the year. Some deportees of old standing have been brought back as part of the confidence-building measures, and this should be built into the negotiation. We want the delegation that Mr. Shrawi speaks for to be able to come home at the end of each session and to tell the Palestinians that it has obtained this or that progress from us. We think that this is...
I disagree with that, because I think human rights cannot be a negotiable item. They are rights, and they should not be used as bargaining chips in negotiations. I think they should be used in order to supply the negotiations with the required atmosphere. But not to be used as means of pressure.
Another round just ended. Ours. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We focus next on Macedonia, where President Clinton says he's considering sending U.S. troops as part of an international peacekeeping force. Macedonia, with 1.4 million people, was part of the former Yugoslavia and the only republic to break away without bloodshed. It has yet to receive diplomatic recognition from the United States and has been locked in a bitter fight with Greece over its name. Macedonia is also the name of a northern Greek region, and the word echoes back thousands of years in Greek history. The president of Macedonia and top officials have been in the United States. Today, correspondent Charles Krause interviewed the foreign minister, Stevo Svenkovsky.
Thank you for joining us. President Clinton has been considering sending troops to your country, to Macedonia, but I gather nobody so far has actually formally asked your government whether you're willing to accept them. Would your government welcome U.S. military troops in Macedonia?
Well, there was not a formal approach to our government yet. We have some contacts and information about that, but nothing formal yet. This idea of the troops is something I don't have specifics yet. I don't know what it is meant to be, what the mandate of these troops will be, so I cannot give you a straight answer right now. But we think that it is very important that U.S. government has shown concern about keeping the peace in Macedonia.
You say you haven't been told, but does your government have an idea of what you would like U.S. troops to do if they were deployed?
Well, we do have some United Nations troops already in Macedonia, and they have been very useful till now. So we would very much like something like that operation to continue and to be sized with the situation, how the situation will develop. We do not know what threats may the future and the near future bring, because all this region has proven to be unpredictable. But at this moment, we particularly, right now, we do not see some immediate threat to Macedonia, but because of the possible spillover from Bosnia and through Kosovo, Macedonia is always in danger.
You say you see no immediate threat, but the administration has talked about putting troops in Macedonia to contain an expansion of the fighting in the Balkans. Do you see Serbia as a potential threat?
Well, it is very unpredictable what their behavior may be. We have witnessed in the last couple of years that their behavior is very unpredictable. So I cannot say anything at this moment. I do not have any information of some immediate threat at this particular moment.
When did you first hear of the idea that the U.S. might be considering sending troops to your country?
Oh, I've read it, I believe, in Wall Street Journal or something like that.
You read it in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes.
So far, has the administration formally contacted you or President Gligorov about this idea?
Well, I think there were some informal contacts probably with President Lehrer. Formally, up to this moment, I don't know of any formal contacts.
So in effect, you're still waiting to receive some sort of more definite confirmation of
Yes,
this?
and we are very much interested to have some more information soon, because it is very important for us any possible contact with the U.S. government, because not only the troops, but many other aspects of our relations with the United States are very important for the peace in the region. To this point, Republic of Macedonia is not formally recognized by the United States, and I believe that the recognition will very much contribute to the peace and will very much warn all possible forces in the region against any disturbances of the peace in Macedonia. So that will be the most important move in stabilizing the peace in Macedonia.
Let me turn now to Bosnia. To what extent could the fighting there affect the situation in Kosovo and in Macedonia?
I think that the main threat is spillover of the war, not some immediate aggression to Macedonia. I don't think that now, at this particular moment, that is possible. But the spillover of the war from Bosnia and through Kosovo, once it spreads, it is very difficult to contain. And once it reaches Macedonia, the whole Balkan will absolutely be involved. There is no way, if Macedonia is involved, that Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, and probably Turkey will not be involved in the war. If some peace agreement is reached in Bosnia, I believe that all the possibility of spreading of the war in other regions will be much lower. It will not diminish. There will still be some possibility that something starts in Kosovo, but I think that the probability of that will be much lower.
If the Bosnian Serbs continue to refuse to agree to the Vance Owen plan, do you think that the West and the United States should use military force against them?
I would not like to enter in this kind of discussion. We are a country in a region which tries to keep the peace as much as possible, and we do not like to enter in this kind of political discussion on what can happen and what should be done in the other countries. We would rather stay away of that.
Do you think that if the Bosnian Serbs are allowed to keep the territory that they've taken in Bosnia, which is about 70% of that country, will that embolden the Serbs to try to take other sections of the Balkans?
Well, that may be this way of reasoning may be true for until a couple of months ago, but I think that now they are very much realizing the possible risks of any new action. So I don't think it will influence much. I think they are now much more aware of the possible consequences of some new Serbian action elsewhere.
A couple more questions. There are about 700 UN troops, peacekeeping troops in Macedonia at the moment. How many U.S. troops do you think might help the situation in your country? How many U.S. troops might be a logical number to think about?
I don't know at this moment, because I don't know what the real idea is. I don't know what what's the idea of these troops? Will it be part of the UN forces which are already, or will it be some separate operation? I don't know. It is very difficult to speak about numbers if the mandate of those troops is not clear.
Well, how do you feel about being foreign minister of a country in which the United States is talking about sending troops, and they haven't even consulted you or the president about what they're thinking about doing?
Well, I think there is some public discussion about offering the troops. Nobody has sent any troops yet, and I don't believe that anybody will send troops before consulting with us. And bringing the issue in the open and discussions about that, I believe, are helpful for us because they are focusing their public attention on the problem of Macedonia, and that is very helpful in any way.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, the major stories of this Thursday. The House Ways and Means Committee passed a tax bill that would raise about $245 billion in new revenues over 5 years. The government reported consumer prices rose 0.4% in April, the largest increase in 3 months. Retail sales were up 1.2%. And Defense Secretary Aspen declared an end to the Star Wars program. He said the collapse of the Soviet Union had made it unnecessary. Good night, Robin.
Good night, Jim. That's the NewsHour for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night with our regular Friday political analysts, Gergen and Shields. I'm Robert MacNeil. Good night.
Funding for the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by PepsiCo. PepsiCo. Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the NewsHour is also provided by AT&T and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.